YouTube viewers, welcome to this video. Right, in this video we are going to talk about the buzzword serverless these days, right? So you might have used serverless in AWS using the Lambda functions. You might have used functions in Azure or in GCP. So in Kubernetes, if you are having a Kubernetes cluster, we can use the serverless concept. So there are a few solutions that we can use to deploy serverless components in Kubernetes cluster, and the one we are going to look in this video is called Kubeless, and there is Opensource function as a service, and then there is Knative for Kubernetes. So this video is about Kubeless. Alright, so I've got my Kubernetes cluster ready. If I show you kubectl version -- short, I'm running version 1.17.0 kubectl get nodes. Okay, so I'm basically running Kubernetes using Kubernetes in Docker. So these are the Kubernetes nodes. Okay, so I'm gonna go to my browser and search for Kubeless. There we go, kubeless.io, and let's look at the installation documentation. So basically it involves CLI, which is called Kubeless, which we will be downloading in a minute, and then we will be deploying that in our Kubernetes cluster. Alright, so when we deploy that in our Kubernetes cluster, it's going to deploy some custom resource definitions that we can use later in this video. Okay, so I'm going to go to the release page, and the latest release as of recording this video is version 1.0.6, and I'm going to download the Kubeless binary. So I'm running Linux, so I'm going to download this file, Kubeless Linux AMD 64, copy the link. Okay, so wget. Alright, so let's wait for it to download. Alright, so we have the Kubeless Linux AMD 64 zip. Unzip it. Okay, so we've got the binary here under bundles Kubeless Linux AMD 64 directory. If you take a look at the directory, we've got the Kubeless file there. So I'm going to move it to user local bin, and now if I do which Kubeless, we've got Kubeless installed. So that's it. So we've got the Kubeless binary installed. So now we need to deploy some resources in our Kubernetes cluster. If I do Kubeless version, you've got that. Kubeless, if you just type Kubeless, it's going to show you the list of commands that you can use. So what we will basically be using is this command, this subcommand called function. Okay, kubectl function. If you just type function or function help, you can get Kubeless function. It's going to show you the subcommands that's available for the function subcommand. You can call a function, you can deploy a function, describe list. We will see all these options shortly. What else we've got? Kubeless get server config. Let's take a look at that. Kubeless get server config. Unable. Okay, so we need to deploy this Kubeless resources in our Kubernetes cluster before we can start using this. Okay, so don't worry about that. We've got our Kubeless binary downloaded and moved to user local bin. And now with RBAC enabled, if your cluster has role-based access control enabled, you basically need to run these commands here. Okay, the first command is we are going to create a namespace called Kubeless. By default, when you deploy the resources, the manifest file that Kubeless provides us, it will be deployed everything under the Kubeless namespace. So copy that, paste it, kubectl get namespace. So we have the Kubeless namespace, and now I'm going to copy this second command, paste it. Okay, so now we can see here it has created a config map, it has created a deployment called Kubeless controller manager. So that's the component that's responsible for deploying your function into your Kubernetes cluster. Alright, and it has created a cluster role binding, and these are the three custom resource definition that it has deployed us. So one is function, so you can do things like kubectl get functions, kubectl describe functions, and so on. And then we have the HTTP triggers and cron job triggers. So basically when you deploy a function, like when you deploy a Lambda function in AWS, how would you invoke that function? How would you execute that function? So basically in AWS you've got API gateway, HTTP endpoint. You can trigger based on various events. So here we have two events based on HTTP trigger. It's going to give you a HTTP endpoint. So if you hit that HTTP endpoint, your Lambda function, or sorry, your Kubeless function will get invoked. Or you can set a cron job trigger. Basically, if you want to run your kubelet function on a schedule, you can use this trigger. Okay, so now let's take a look at the Kubeless namespace. kubectl -n kubeless get all. Okay, so that's already running. So it has deployed just one deployment called Kubeless controller manager and a pod. So basically this pod has like 3 containers. Let's take a look at what the containers are. kubectl -n kubeless describe deploy Kubeless controller manager. Okay, so 3 containers. So we've got the Kubeless function controller, HTTP trigger controller, cron job trigger controller. So those are the 3 containers running in a single pod. kubectl get all -n kubeless. Okay, so we saw that. So we've got our resources deployed and we've got our kubeless binary kubectl get crds. So after we deploy our Kubeless resources in our cluster, we can see all these new custom resource definitions, and you can do kubectl get functions. At the moment we don't have any functions or we don't have any cron job triggers, but we will see once we deploy a function. The way we deploy the function is using the Kubeless binary that we downloaded earlier, right? So basically, what is serverless? You don't need to worry about the manifest for creating the pod, specifying which image to use, and the resource limits, resource requests, which node it should run, how long it should run, and all those things. You don't have to worry about the underlying infrastructure. So all you're going to do is you're going to write a simple function. That's it. And you're going to deploy that function in your cluster, and the function controller, this one, the function controller, Kubeless function controller, will take your function and then deploy it in your Kubernetes cluster. So that's basically serverless. But when you deploy serverless, it's going to automatically create a deployment pod behind the scene, which we will see. Because when you say serverless, it doesn't literally mean there is no server, because it has to be run, it has to run somewhere, right? So serverless, the concept means that you don't have to worry about the underlying infrastructure. You only concentrate on the code on a particular function. You don't have to write an entire program, just a bit of a function, and if you want to call that function gets executed. All right, so now let's take a look at how to deploy your function. I'm going to write a very simple Python function, and I'm going to show you how to deploy that function using Kubeless binary. Okay, so vi hello.py, just creating a simple Python file. I'm going to define a function called define foo. The name of the function is foo, and you need 2 arguments to it, event and context. If you're used to using AWS Lambda function, you would know about these 2 things, event and context. Basically, whatever is triggering this Lambda function will pass that as an event. So you will have some metadata, you will have the actual payload, you'll have the actual data that's coming in. Okay, so we've defined the function. This is the handler function, the Lambda handler, the serverless handler function. Okay, and I'm going to just return hello world. That's it. It's a very simple function. That's all I have got, just a 2-line of code. I'm defining a function and I'm returning something, hello world. It's not a massively helpful function, but just something to start with. All right, a hello world function. Save that. So now I've got my Python function. That's all I care about. All your developers, they just need to care about their code logic. That's it. They don't have to worry about how they are going to run it, or which image and which node and so on. So don't worry about anything. Just write your function, and now we are going to use the kubeless command to deploy this function in our Kubernetes cluster. And if I do kubectl get all on the default namespace, I don't have anything deployed here. So now let's deploy the function. Kubeless function deploy --help. So we've got some options here how to deploy a function. Okay, so kubectl function ls, sorry, kubeless function ls. We don't have any functions at the moment. Kubeless function top, that's going to show you some details about each function and how many calls were made, how many failures, and how long it took, and so on. All right, kubeless function deploy. So now kubeless function deploy, you need to give it give your function a name. Let's call it hello and minus minus from file. This is where your code actually resides. My code resides in hello.py, and you're going to choose the runtime. So basically Kubeless supports few runtimes like PHP, Python, Ruby, Go, Node.js, Java, JVM, and so on. And if you want to see what runtimes are supported, you can do kubeless get server config. And if you do that, you can see here the supported runtimes are Ballerina, Go, .NET Core, Java, Node.js, various versions of Node.js, PHP, Python, Ruby. So we will be using Python 3.7. Okay, kubeless function deploy, name of the function hello minus minus from file. So we've defined our function code in hello.py, and we are going to choose the runtime Python 3.7 and handler. Handler is the handler method that gets invoked when you run this function. So the handler function, the way to specify is the name of your file hello, but not with the extension. So my file is hello.py, so you need to refer the name of the file without the extension hello dot and name of the handler function within your code. So my function, the function that I've defined in this file is foo. All right, that's it. Our function has been deployed. So now if I do kubeless function ls, it says name of the function, where it has been deployed to, the default namespace, handler is hello.foo, hello is the file name, foo is the handler method, and the runtime we chose for this function, which is Python 3.7. Dependencies, we don't have any Python dependencies. Status, it's not ready yet. Okay, so now we've defined our function kubectl get functions. Now we can see we've got one function named hello, and if I do kubectl get all, and you can see here it has deployed a deployment called hello, and it has also created a pod, and it has also created a service for us. Okay, so behind the scene it has created the pod. So actually your code will be running on this pod. Whenever you invoke your code, it's going to run on this pod. kubectl describe pod hello, and if you look at the image that's used, image is kubeless Python image. Okay, kubectl get all. Okay, so our pod is running, so now we can invoke our function kubeless function ls, and now we can see the status of the function. It's ready to be invoked. So how do you invoke your function? So either you can use a cron schedule to automatically invoke a function on a periodic schedule basis, or you can use a HTTP trigger. We will look at the HTTP trigger in some other video because it requires ingress resource, ingress controller to be deployed in your pod, in your cluster, and then we can hit the ingress endpoint and that will invoke this function. Or you can use a cron schedule, which we'll see in a minute. The other way to invoke your function is kubeless function call, and the name of the function is hello. Okay, that's it. We called the function and it returned hello world. Cool, that's working fine. Now if I do kubeless function top, so we've got that method. It's a get method, total number of calls. We just made one call to that function and how long it took. So that's the average duration. We just ran it once. So now if I run it few times and do function top, so we've invoked this function 5 times, and average duration in seconds is 0.0049 something. So that's the total duration of the seconds for all the 5 calls. Cool. So that's how you invoke your function. Kubeless function ls. Okay, so we've got the function now. So how do you delete this function? Kubeless, there are a couple of ways you can delete it. Kubeless function delete hello. So that's one method of deleting the function. Or you can use kubectl delete function hello. So either way it's gonna work. So now if I do kubeless function ls, so that's gone. So we've removed our function. Kubectl get all, that mod is getting terminated and all the resources we've deployed are gone. And if I do kubectl get functions, no resource found in default namespace, so that's completely gone. Okay, so now let's try and write another Lambda function, another Python function, and I'll show you how you can use an environment variable. All right, so hello.py vi hello.py, vi hello.py, and I'm going to use the same function, but I'm going to use the OS module, import OS, and I'm going to do name equals, let's say, os.environ.get, name of the environment variable that we are going to get, name or a default value called stranger. Okay, so let me also change this, return hello %s. Okay, so what this function will do is it's going to return something. If we set the environment variable when we create this function, an environment variable called name, it's going to use that. Otherwise, if there is no environment variable name defined, it's going to use the default value, which is stranger. Okay, and it's going to return this value. So that's our function. We are importing the OS module. I've saved it. Now let's create the function, the same command that I'm going to use now. Kubeless function deploy hello, it's the same function. Okay, function created. Kubeless, or kubectl get functions. We've got the hello function. Kubectl get all. Our pods are all running. Kubeless function ls, so that's running and it's ready. Kubeless function call hello. Okay, hello stranger, which means we didn't actually pass the environment variable to our function when we created the function. You can pass the environment variable when you are creating your function, or once you've created your function, you can also update your existing function and pass an environment variable. Kubeless function update, name of the function is hello -n, and I'm passing an environment variable name equals Venkat N. Okay, and it has updated the function kubectl get all. Yep, the old pod is terminated and the new pod just started 5 seconds ago. Now if I invoke the function kubeless function call hello, because we've passed in the environment variable name equals Venkat N, now it should say hello Venkat N. There you go. So that's how you pass environment variables. Okay, kubeless function delete hello. Before doing that, okay, let's delete that. Kubeless function list, we don't have any functions. Kubeless kubectl get functions, we don't have any functions. Kubectl get all. Okay, so that's the one that's getting terminated. So now how do you run a function periodically? You don't have to do kubeless function call and invoke the function. So for example, if you want to run a function on a regular basis, like every day or every couple of days and so on, you can use something called cron schedule. So while creating the function, you can create a schedule. Let me show you. Kubeless function function deploy. It's the same command, -- from file, that's the file that contains my code, runtime Python 3.7 handler, and now I'm going to say -- schedule, basically run it every minute. Okay, So function deployed, kubeless function ls, that's ready. And if I do kubeless function top, it hasn't been invoked yet. No, it hasn't been invoked. Okay, so we've created this function with a schedule that runs every minute. Kubeless function ls, and if I do kubectl get all, you can see here it has created a cron job, a deployment for the function, and it has also created a cron job based on the schedule that we created. So it's going to run this function, invoke this function every minute. And if I do watch kubectl get all, and you can see here already one job completed, and the name of the job, it has created a job, one run completed. And now if I do kubeless function top, you can see here total calls is 1 and the average duration and everything. All right, kubectl get all, and shortly it's going to trigger the function second time. Watch kubectl get all. Okay, so 50 seconds, 53 seconds. So after about a minute, because we've set the schedule to run every minute, and soon we will see, yep, there you go. So that's the second job, and we've got the second job here as well. And now if you do kubeless function top, so we can see it has invoked the function 2 times. So we haven't invoked the function manually using kubeless function call hello. We can also do that, and because we've set up a cron schedule, it's gonna invoke the function automatically. Okay, so there's something else that I wanted to show you. Kubeless function, we've seen the list. You can either use list or ls, kubeless function ls or list. Both are just alias. And we've seen the update command, we've seen the top, we need to see the logs, we've seen delete, call, and everything. So let's look at the describe command. Kubeless function describe hello. Okay, so label and runtime, handler, namespace, hello, and so on. Okay, now let's look at the logs. Kubeless function logs hello. There we go. So we've got the logs. So the HTTP 200 are the ones that we invoked. That one. So these 3 are invoked by the cron schedule, because you can see the user agent and also the IP address 172.17.05. Yeah, cool. All right, so that's serverless. Kubeless function delete hello. Cool. Okay, so I think that's all I wanted to show you in this video, and somebody asked me to cover the serverless concept in Kubernetes, so there we go. And at some point I will also be doing videos on Knative and Opensource, Open Function as a Service. So that's it for this video. If you've got any questions, let me know, and please give it a try. I will see you all in my next video. Bye bye.